Ready? All right, here I am, Mike Pearl at the door, and we're going to be talking about a subject, UFOs identified at last. Now, these are not unidentified flying objects. These are flying objects, and I guarantee you there is such a thing. The Air Force believes in them, and they're dedicated to trying to discover what they are. But I know exactly what they are, and they are coming to the earth. And you may have seen one, and you may have seen something that's fake, but there are real UFOs in the Bible. The Bible speaks of flying, palleted, saucer-shaped ships with portholes all around the outside that flies at the speed of light, emits burning coals when it sits on the ground, has lightning emanating from it, electrical discharges. With that burnt spots that are on the ground, there's charred pieces of material left underneath them when they park. And they're piloted by strange, multi-headed, multi-eyed, and multi-winged creatures that are a combination of humanoid and animal and bird features. And the Bible speaks of Star Wars between extraterrestrial creatures that last for weeks. And the Bible describes a time when they will come to the earth and men will have heart attacks at seeing them come. That's all in your Bible. Now, just because you didn't know that doesn't mean it's not there. Yeah. How many times have you read the Bible all the way through? Okay, there you go. Ezekiel Chapter 1, verse 1 begins one passage on the subject. Ezekiel has a vision, and he says that he is among the rivers captive on the river Chebar, among the captives on the river Chebar, and he has a vision. And he said, the word of the Lord came unto Ezekiel expressly, and it said to him, and then God gives him this vision of God himself, fire enfolding itself, of a great burning light that comes, that sparkles, and it brightness round about it. And then he said, in the midst thereof, of this bright light, which was God, was the likeness of 4 living creatures. Now, he doesn't define them because they don't fit any, they're not human, they're not animal, they're just living creatures. And he says their appearance was as the likeness of a man. So the shadow they would cast, the form they would have, would be structured like a man with feet, legs, knees, hips, torso, arms in the same place, and head. So similar to a man's structure. And every one had 4 faces. So these guys have a face, not 4 heads, but 4 faces. And they had every one 4 wings. So they have 2 here and 2 on the front side like this. So each face has 1 wing. And their feet were straight feet, as the sole of their feet was like the sole of a calf's foot. So they have cloven hooves instead of feet like we do. And they sparkle like the color of burnished brass. So they've got that warm brass, sparkly color about them. And they had the hands of a man under their wings. Did you ever catch a bat and look at it up close? When I was a kid, we used to tie branches, dry branches with no leaves on them together, throw little pebbles up in the air, the bats would follow them down, and we would swat the bats. So we were lucky to hit 2 or 3 bats in the evening, but we let them go, but you'd catch their wings in the branches of the trees. Some of you kids can try this. And so you pick them up and look at them. Their faces look kind of humanoid, but they have these mammal wings. And right out here, it looks like it'd be right here, but it's actually here, are little hands. It's kind of like a little human hand right here. Now, the fingers are the ends of the wings. They stick out this way. So it has maybe this part, and then they got that little hand right there. And so when they pick up fruit, their wings reach out like this, grab the fruit, and they pick it up and hold it in their mouth and eat it this way. So fascinating little creatures. Now, sometimes you see angels painted with wings. No angel ever has a wing, but these cherubim do. And their wings are not feathered wings. You see artists painting feathered wings on heavenly creatures. They don't have the feathered wings, they have mammal wings. And then he says, and he said, and they had four wings and four faces on their four wings, and the wings were joined one to another. So right at the top, they're hooked together. They turned not when they went. So when the creature got the ox face facing you, when it comes toward you, the ox face is facing you. When it goes the other direction, the lion's face, it takes the lead, and then the man's face takes the lead, and then the eagle's face takes the lead. But the ox face always faces north or south or east or west or whichever direction it is. So the thing doesn't turn when it, like we do. It's got these four wings, and it's just more like a helicopter. It just goes where it wants to, or drone, I guess would be to say. And they turned not when they went, and they went straight forward. As for the likeness of their faces, they had the face of a man, the face of a lion, the face on the right side, and the forehead the face of an ox on the left side, and the forehead the face of an eagle. So a man, an ox, a lion, and an eagle. Now, I don't think they had like a big beaky eagle sticking out this way. It just looked like an eagle looking right at it, but I don't believe it was like a whole separate head. It's one head with these four faces on it. And then he says, verse 11, thus were their faces, and their wings were stretched upward. Two wings, every one joined one to another, to cover their bodies. So these guys always have, unless they're flying, two wings covering their bodies. And they went every one straight forward where the Spirit was to go. So these guys follow the Spirit, their own spirit, and they turned not when they went. So this means they're not mechanical creatures. They are living beings with a spirit. And for the likeness of the living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire and like the appearance of lamps. So that takes us back to verse 4 where he talks about it burning fire. And he said, they went up and down among the living creatures. It went up and down among the living creatures, that burning fire. And the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightnings. So picture these four living creatures here. Probably a different face facing you from one perspective. So you could see four different faces, four of them in a square. And this bright light with lightning coming out of it, moving around between them. And their wings, two of them outstretched and two of them covering their bodies. And the fire was bright, and out of the fire went forth lightning, and the living creatures ran and returned at the appearance of a flash of lightning. So these guys move as fast as lightning does, like that. Now, as I beheld the living creatures, behold, one wheel. This is a new thing. This is an object now, not a person. One wheel upon the earth by the living creatures with the four faces. So he describes something, an object there called a wheel. The appearance of the wheels, the four of them, and their work was like unto the color of beryl, that's emerald green. And the four had one likeness, four objects, four wheels, just alike. The appearance and their work, so it is a created object, was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. So he sees these four objects that are constructed like a wheel laying horizontally, not vertically. And it looks like one wheel inside of another wheel. So one wheel would be larger than the other inside of it. Like a cup and a saucer sort of thing. And when they went up on their four sides, and they turned not, as a wheel does, when they went. So these objects fly flat, and they don't rotate when they fly. For their rings, the outer ring, they're circular, were so high that they were dreadful. So he's standing here in this vision. He looks up and it's just dreadfully high. I mean, you know what, maybe 150, 200, 300 feet or something. And he's looking up there and see the outer rings of this thing. It might have been bigger than that. And the rings were full of eyes around about the four. So around the outside edge of the ring was what he called eyes. And there's ports or windows or lights. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. So the living creature is a separate from this object. So when the living creature travels at the speed of light, these wheels, flying wheels, accompany them traveling at the speed of light. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. So we're talking about now flying objects. Whithersoever the Spirit was to go, they went. Thither was the Spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the Spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. So these wheels are piloted remotely, apparently, by the spirit of the creature that is flying beside them. So they have the ability to direct this flying object as they move through space. Then those went, these went, when those stood, these stood, when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. So it's kind of like a well-trained military drill. The four of them in sync together with the four wheels in sync together, all of them moving in a pattern through space at the speed of light. The likeness of the firmament, now he's introduced a new subject. There is a big plane, a platform, a surface on the tops supported by the heads of these living creatures. So a big, say, square platform with on each corner is one of these living creatures, and flying right underneath are these four ships. So now we have a big conglomerate of activity going on. Upon the firmament, upon the heads of the living creatures, was as the color of the terrible crystal clear, stretched forth over their heads above. So it's a firmament clear as glass. And under the firmament were their wings straight, the one toward the other. So picture the four of them, each with a wing reached out like this toward the other on the corners, sort of like a table is built. And then they had two wings left with which to fly. And under the firmament, the wings straight, one toward the other. Every one had two, which covered on this side, and every one had two, which covered on that side, their bodies. And when they went, I heard the noise of their wings like the noise of great waters. So these creatures and the ships make a roaring, water-crashing sound as the voice of the Almighty, the voice of speech, as the noise of a host. When they stood, they let down their wings. Picture that drumming, loud noise, and finally they land, and then they lower their wings, and everything begins to quieten down. Wow, God was giving Ezekiel some amazement because he's fixing to tell him to prophesy some judgment to come on the nation of Israel, and he wanted to show him his glory and of things to come. And there was a voice from the firmament that was over their heads when they stood and had let down their wings. So now he's introduced another element. On top of the firmament is a voice speaking, which now seems to be the center, the focal point of attention. He started at the bottom with these four living creatures carrying this platform, and these four flying ships accompany them. And now we have the centerpiece, which is a throne in the middle of this sea of glass, crystal, and one like the Son of Man sitting on the throne. Guess who that is? The appearance of a man upon it, and I saw as the color of amber, as the appearance of the fire round about within, from the appearance of his loins even downward, from the appearance of his loins even upward, I saw as it were the appearance of fire, as it had brightness round about it. The word brightness always used in the Bible to express the glory that radiates from a supreme potentate. always without exception in the King James Bible. Get your other Bibles and you'll be embarrassed, humiliated, and ashamed, and you'll throw them out when you see what they do with the word. As the appearance of the bow that is in the cloud in the day of rain, a rainbow, was the appearance of the brightness round about, this was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. So now he identifies this one on the throne, and the glory that radiates from it is the glory of the Lord. When I saw it, I fell on my face, and I heard a voice of one that spake. And then we come to verse 31. I heard also the noise of the wings of the living creatures that touched one another, and the noise of the wheels over against them, and a noise of a great rushing. So they create a whoosh sound. Now we skip from Ezekiel 1 and go all the way down to Ezekiel 10. During that intervening time, God pronounces judgment on the nation of Israel. Now, there is detective work to be done here. We're going to find out exactly what Lucifer looks like in this. It's going to reveal to us what kind of facial features Lucifer has. But you've got to remember chapter 1 when you get to chapter 10 and put the two together to identify it. God leaves clues like that to make the Bible a lots of fun. Ezekiel 10:1, I looked, and behold, in the firmament that was above the head of the cherubims, there appeared over them, as it were a sapphire stone, as the appearance of the likeness of a throne, a man clothed with linen. And he said, go between the cherubim, and fill thine hand with coals of fire between the cherubims, and scatter them over the city. And the cherubim stood on the right side of the house, and the man went in, and so forth. And the glory of the Lord went in up from the cherub and stood over the threshold. The court was full of the brightness of the Lord. And the sound of the cherub's wings I heard to the outer court as the voice of the Almighty. And it came to pass, when he had commanded the man clothed with linen, saying, take fire from beneath the wheels and from the cherubims. Then he went in and stood beside the wheels. So this man, which is not Ezekiel and it's not an angel, this man, somebody that's gone on to heaven, might be Enoch. It might be Abraham. It might be Methuselah. Could be Abel or Noah, any one of them. But here's a man dressed in linen. He's in heaven now. He's having a lot of fun. And he's enjoying this, and he's getting to be a part of it. So he tells him, now I want you to go down on the ground underneath this platform, underneath these cherubim, underneath these ships. And I want you to get a hot coal. So these ships were leaving burning coals underneath them as they sat on the ground. And he said, take the fire from between the wheels, from between the cherubims. Then he went in and stood beside the wheels. And one cherub stretched forth his hand from between the cherubims into the fire that was between the cherubims, and took thereof, and put it into the hands of him that was clothed with linen, and took it and went out. And there appeared in the cherubim the form of a man's hand under their wings. And when I looked, behold, 4 wheels, 1 wheel, so forth, and he describes the same thing he did earlier, the wheel in the middle of a wheel, so forth, skipping down to verse 14. Every one had 4 faces. So he's describing again, after now skipping exact, almost quote description he gave in chapter 1 of the wheels and the cherubs. Verse 14, every one had 4 faces. Okay, we've already been told about 4 faces, right? What were they? An ox face, a man's face, an eagle's face, and a lion's face. You see, when Hollywood does stuff, they're just duplicating what's already in the Bible. Just like zombies. The Bible talks about zombies. Quite different from what the movies have, but the Bible talks about zombies. We'll cover that another time. If you don't know the Bible, you're illiterate. Do you realize that? You're depending on a lot of secondhand information. And everyone had 4 faces. The first face was the face of a, what is it? Ox? That's not what it says. The first face was the face of a cherub. That wasn't included in the list before. The second face is the face of a man. The third face of a lion. The fourth face of an eagle. So 3 of them are identical, and one of them, the cherub face, takes the place of the ox face. So that means the natural face of a cherub is the face of an ox. Now we find cherub in the Bible with 2 wings, 4 wings, and 6 wings. We find variations between one and the other, modifications of them. So when you say cherub, it's like if somebody from outer space came down and they said, "What's that?" And we said, "That's a cat." And a little purred up thing there on the couch. And then we go to a zoo and they say, "What's that?" We said, "That's a cat." And it's a big lion. And what's that? That's a cat. It's a tiger. What's that? It's a cat. It's a leopard. And so what's that? That's a bobcat. Where'd your tail go? And so there are all kinds of things we call cats, which has great variations. So it is in heaven. Angels have some variations within them, and so do cherubs. So they're different. So now, to skip ahead, it says in the book of Isaiah that Lucifer was the anointed cherub that covereth blank the throne of God. So Lucifer is a cherub, therefore his natural face is that of an ox. So if Lucifer wanted to be worshiped, what would he inspire people to use as an object of worship? Oxen, cows, calves. What did Israel use to try to represent God in the wilderness? A calf, a baby ox, a young ox's face. And what did the people in Cana use for sacrifices? Bulls. What did they worship? Bulls. And throughout history, if you look, one of the main objects of honoring and worship and sacrifice have always been bulls. That's why Lucifer inspires people to do that. It's in honor and dedication to him. So it's not a goat head, it's a bull's head that would properly represent Satan. Now this is what he says, "And the cherubims were lifted up, they flew. This is the living creature that I saw by the river of Chebar." So he goes back to that chapter 1, verse 2 or 3, whatever it was, and he says these 4 cherub are the exact same 4 that I saw earlier, exact same 4, when he calls one of them a cherub in place of the ox. So clearly he's speaking of the same thing. "And the cherub lifted up their wings and mounted up from the earth in my sight." Boy, I'm looking forward to seeing that. The noise and the lightning and the rainbows and the glory of God moving around. "When they went out, the wheels also were beside them, and everyone stood at the door of the gate of the Lord's house, and the glory of the Lord of Israel was over them above." So, you see, the people of Israel didn't see any of this. The Jews didn't see that. They saw a fire come down, the glory of the Lord, and a smoke filled the temple. But they were unable to see all the things round about. Remember a story I read of a missionary that was in one of the African countries, and the rebels were going in and killing the white people, especially missionaries. And so there were some of them trapped in a medical clinic missionary compound, and they were down on their knees praying when they heard that the rebels were moving their way. They couldn't get out. There's about 20 of them there, along with some locals and the foreigners. And they were praying, and somebody was out watching, and they saw, this guy watching, saw this band of heavily armed rebels coming toward the compound where the women would be raped and they'd be killed. And they were all praying inside. And they saw them all of a sudden fall down, flee, look for hiding spots, and then begin to run into the hills and disappeared. So the missionaries were saved, and about 3 months later, they were treating people from this war-torn area. And a rebel came in and sat down with a wound. And as they began to treat him, the rebel looks around, and he's real cautious, looking everywhere. And the missionary finally said to him, "What are you looking for?" He said, "Where do you keep your soldiers?" He said, "We don't have any soldiers here." He said, "Yes, you do. I've seen them." He said, "No, where do you keep your soldiers?" He said, "I tell you, we don't have any. We just trust God. God takes care of us." And the guy said, "Well, do you remember about 3 months ago a group of rebels coming down and fixing to storm your compound?" I said, "Yeah." He said, I was one of them. And suddenly there appeared in front of us a bunch of guys dressed in camouflage with AK-47s, helmets on, hand grenades hanging all over them. Big bunch of them surrounding this place. So I know you got them somewhere. Now God let them see. See? It's like when, was it Isaiah? When he was praying and his servant was afraid. The city was surrounded, and I forgot which prophet it was. He said, open his eyes, and he could see the armies of God surrounding the city, protecting it. No one else could see that. So, you know, the Bible said sometimes we've entertained angels unawares. That means that there's been people we've run into, and I could tell you some stories. I think I ran into an angel one time. There's people we've run into that might have been angels. They might have looked like bums or homeless people or something else. That's another subject. And by the way, it's one we're going to cover in the next couple of weeks. We're going to go two more subjects. We're going to go into angels, the nature of them, and the sons of God and the daughters of men, giants. So he said these are the living creatures. Now, when you go to the book of Revelation, you find these creatures, these cherubim, again. John gets a visit to heaven. He gets carried off. He said, whether I was in the spirit or not, I don't know. Whether I was actually there or not, I don't know, but it seemed real. So he said, I got carried off, and he that sat upon the throne, the platform of glass shining, just like Ezekiel saw, was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone, and there was a rainbow round about the throne in sight like unto an emerald. Of course there was. Ezekiel saw it about 800 years earlier. And around about the throne were 24 seats, and upon the seats I saw 24 elders sitting clothed in white raiment, and they had on their heads crowns of gold. That didn't take place under Ezekiel, these 24 seats that God brought in and surrounded the throne with these human. And out of the throne proceed lightnings and thunders and voices, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. And before the throne there was a sea of glass like unto crystal. And in the midst of the throne, round about the throne, were 4 beasts, full of eyes before and behind. These guys are not supporting the throne. There's now 4 of them around the throne, different ones. How do you know they're different ones? Because it said, and the first beast was like a lion. So it didn't have 4 faces, just a lion's face. The second beast like a calf. The third beast had the face of a man, and the fourth beast was a flying eagle. Same 4 faces, but only one face on a head. And the 4 beasts had each of them 6 wings. The others had 4 wings. So these have 6 wings. And they were full of eyes within. So they got eyes under their wings here, like this, and on their body. And on the backside, they've got eyes. So these guys are full of eyes. I have enough trouble keeping stuff getting in my 2 eyes. I can imagine them everywhere like that. And they rest not day and night, crying, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, which was and is to come. I'm looking forward to hearing that. Woo, that's going to be good. I'm going to join in. I know what they're going to say before they say it, right? I've already been there. I see them start to open their mouth. I'm going to join in. And when those beasts give glory and honor and thanks to him that sat on the throne who liveth forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down before the throne, worship him that liveth forever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, these 24 elders are probably 12 Old Testament saints and 12 apostles. They say, Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou wast created in all things, for thy pleasure they were created. And behold, I heard the voice of many angels round about the throne and the beast. So now he calls these 4 creatures, living creatures, he called them beast. Again, this is a word that he searched his vocabulary to come up with a word to describe what he's looking at. And so he calls them beast, as Ezekiel called them living creatures. And the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000. That's millions and thousands of thousands, millions, and saying with a loud voice, here they all are together. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing. That's what you call a worship service. and every creature which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth. Under the earth? Yep. And such as are in the sea, and all that are in them, heard I saying, picture the whale coming to service, saying, blessing and honor and glory, the dolphin, crawdad, and blessing every creature in heaven, under the sea. All of them gave thanks, saying, blessing, honor, glory, power unto him that sitteth upon the throne, unto the Lamb forever and ever. And the four beasts said, Amen. So that's not out of vogue yet, and won't be in eternity. Not here, but amen. And the 24 elders fell down and worshipped him that liveth forever and ever. Now that's what I say, wow. But that's not the end of it. There's another situation with some flying ships in the Bible. In fact, David got in a tight spot. Couldn't defeat the enemy, too many of them. And he said to God, should I go up to battle? And God said, don't do that. Just go retreat, go back around and come out under the mulberry trees. And he said then, is in 1 Chronicles 14, verse 15, and it shall be when thou shalt hear the sound of going in the tops of the mulberry trees, thou shalt go out to battle, for God is gone forth before thee to smite the host of the Philistines. So he said, David, this job's too big for you, can't handle it. I got some reserves that are going to come in. So you just get in the mulberry bushes, and when you hear something go whoosh, like low-flying jets coming in, right over the top of the mulberry tree, shaking like this, he said, then go out to battle. I've gone ahead of you. I've taken care of it. God killed them. David went out and did a mop-up job with his men. So that's when God sent some UFOs in, flying at a high rate of speed to destroy the enemy. Now, you say, but why would the angels need flying saucers? Because they're subject, and we're going to cover this next time around, they're subject to the laws of nature just like you are. They have physical structure. God makes them spirits to minister, but they have physical structure. Daniel 10:2. Now, I gave you a teaser a while ago. I said there was a Star Wars battle lasted weeks. I'm going to read it to you. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. He's praying for deliverance. I ate no pleasant bread, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth, neither did I anoint myself at all till the whole 3 weeks were fulfilled. And in the 4th and 20th day of the 1st month, as I was by the side of the great river, which is Hadekel, I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed with linen, whose loins were girded with the gold of UFOs. His body was like the beryl, there it is again, his face as the appearance of lightning, his eyes were lamps of fire, his arms and his feet like the color of polished brass. We've seen all this before, haven't we? And his voice his words like the voice of a multitude. So when this guy spoke, it resonated and reverberated like 1,000 people speaking. Had a richness and depth to it. Probably musical. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men that were with me saw not the vision, but a great quaking fell upon me, so they fled to hide themselves. Therefore was I left alone. I saw the great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness was turned into my corruption, and I retained no strength. Yet heard I the voice of the words, and when I heard the voice of the words, then was I deep sleep upon my face, and I saw the face toward the ground. I beheld, and a hand touched me, which set me upon my knees, upon the palms of my hands, and he said unto me, O Daniel, a man greatly beloved. Hey, isn't that good for God to say that? To be greatly beloved of God. God calls us his beloved. Now, if you're his child, you're his beloved. Understand the words I speak unto thee, and stand upright, for unto thee I am now sent. So this angel comes after 21 days of praying to answer Daniel's prayer. He said, "Fear not, for from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for to thy words." So God was ready to answer the prayer 21 days earlier, from just the first he started praying it. God doesn't want us just to have to keep asking. You know, if you let your kid just beg, either shut up or do it for him. But God just repeated the same thing over and over again. So we go to God and we ask. He said, God hears you. He hears you. He hears what you're saying. So he said, we heard you, and I was dispensed to come answer your prayer. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. A spirit being, an angel, a fallen angel, who was a prince of the power of the air, who was assigned over the nation of Persia, which is Iran. Persia had a demonic spirit controlling it. The power of the air. The nations are divided, but the angels have different, the fallen angels divide up the nations into different jurisdictions and govern them. So it said, the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. Now, wait a minute. If this spirit being, this angelic being, could prevent God's angel from getting through for 21 days, how did he do that? That's called Star Wars. There were wars in the heavens. There was some kind of resistance formed that took a long, extensive battle to break through the enemy lines and get down to answer the prayer. We can't see it, but I think those ships were flying like this and battling out. You say, couldn't God just snap his finger? Yes. But have you ever seen a checkerboard with just black squares, no red ones, just black checkers, no red checkers? Or a chess game with just one set, no opponent? See, all of life is built black and white, two sides, opponent. The devil is the opponent, God is the righteous. And God could just knock all the checkerboards over, but he doesn't. He plays the game to win. And he wants us to participate and grow up and learn to play the game to win. He tells us to resist the devil. Jesus said to Peter, Satan's desired to have you that he might sift you like wheat. Now, Peter could have said, well, okay, you got rid of him, right? You killed him. You just wiped him out. You told him no, huh? He said, no, I've prayed for you that your faith won't fail when he sifts you. So that's God's method and program, is to pray for us that we'll overcome. He's trying to get us to grow up. You see that? But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, that's a righteous angel, came to help me. And I remained there with the kings of Persia. So there were some righteous kings of Persia, spirit beings. And this prince Michael, which always appears with a sword in the Bible, is a warrior, came to give him assistance. So he had to get some reinforcements, some backups to get through. He didn't have enough forces to get through. So there's your Star Wars. And he said, I've come to make you understand. He gives him some stuff, tells him things. He says, oh, greatly beloved. Then he says this, listen to this. Then said he, knowest thou whereof I am coming to thee? And now, listen to this, blows my mind. Now will I return to the fight with the prince of Persia. This angel wanted to get his message delivered and get back in the battle because the fight was still going on. It hadn't been won yet. They were still battling. And he felt his absence was missed, and that his presence was needed to be effective in this battle with the princes of Persia. You see, we can't see what's going on in the heavenlies, but folks, it's going on all around us all the time. And he says this, and now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia, and when I'm gone forth, lo, the prince of Grecia shall come. So there was another prince over Greece, which is going to come and assist Daniel in the absence of this one. So Daniel wasn't getting left alone. And apparently he was having to be pulled from another country to come and assist Daniel here in Babylon. And I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth, and there's none that holdeth with me in these things but Michael your prince. Now that's something we don't see all that. He said, there's none that holdeth with me but Michael your prince. It's like they were busy somewhere else, or there was a failure of commitment. Their forces were depleted for some reason. And he said, I only have one strong ally in this thing, and that's Michael. Now, there you go. I promised you I'd give you some Star Wars, and that's it. You know, the problem with Bible students is they've turned everything into me, bless me, what can it do for me, spiritual lessons and stuff, and they don't read the Bible like it's written. Don't read it as fact. You live in a world full of beings. They're aliens on this planet right now. They are flying around in ships. They're fighting each other. They have home far away. They divided this world up into segments. And there's coming a great battle in which many will lose and many will win. And there was war in heaven, Revelation 12:7. This has not happened yet. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. The earth is still going on when this takes place. This is in the middle of the tribulation. And he prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation, strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ. For the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. The devil is up in heaven accusing you. Things that you're actually guilty of, he mentions them to God. Things you've done in secret, he brings them up. You think Google knows? Devil knows everything. He's always mentioning it to God. And they overcame him, the devil, by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. And then he says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil is come down to you having great wrath, because he knoweth he hath but a short time. The devil pours it on. That's what the last 3.5 years of the tribulation are about. The devil pouring it on. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, that's Israel, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Now, I told you one final thing here. I had 3 messages ready, and I realized I wasn't going to be able to do but one of them. So the other 2 will be the following weeks. So here is in the book of Luke. I told you that, well, let's get to it. There shall be signs in the sun and the moon and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations and perplexity and the sea waves roaring. He's describing the second coming events. Men's hearts failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. These powers, authorities of the heavens, are these angels that Michael was battling against, that Daniel was praying about, that battle in the heavenlies. He said men's hearts will fail them for fear when they see these things coming up on the earth. The powers of heaven shall be shaken, and then shall they see the sign of the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory. Now, folks, I think our understanding of the second coming is way too spiritualized and sanitized. this is going to be a big event. This is going to be a glorious event. This is going to have, I mean, Disney World, they do these light shows with their lasers and the sound and the music and stuff. Pitiful nothing. God's going to do his pyrotechnic show. And it's going to be a glorious event when he comes back. And when these things begin to come to pass, look up, lift up your hearts, for your redemption draws nigh. And a final short verse. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. See, there's a battle going on right now, and he said you need to get armed up for it. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. He attributes this world as being ruled by these spiritual beings, darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Take unto you the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand, and so forth, so forth. So, that's your UFOs identified. Now, if you have questions, go ahead and send them in this week, and we will respond to them. And I'm sure we've stirred up lots of questions, so you be sure and write, and we'll deal with them. Now, next week I'm going to deal with maybe the sons of, maybe I'll deal with the angels in general next week, what they're like, what they do, their ministry, so forth. Maybe I'll do that. And then maybe the following week I will deal with the sons of God marrying the daughters of men, the time that angels came down and copulated with human women and produced babies that were giants, men of renown. A Bible doctrine that's been around for thousands of years, believed by everybody in the church, all the Bible teachers, up until modern times when people like that stuff on their TV, but they don't want it in their Bible. So we'll deal with some of that coming up. That's it.